Hello everybody and welcome to another video here at TD Channel. Today we're going to cover the basis of procedural pattern generation in RenderMan. Actually, this applies to pretty much every renderer out there, just the API of how you access things is going to be a little bit different. But basically we're going to cover the basics of procedural pattern generation. So I have a little notepad here, and let's imagine that you have a plane that you have unwrapped into UV space. So let's go ahead and here draw our square, and this is going to be the UV coordinates of a plane, just to keep things simple. And as you guys might know or might not know, usually on this plane you're going to have an S, which is usually the same as U, and a T, which is usually the same as V. Usually the S will run from left to right, so S is going to be on this direction and T is going to be on this direction. And when you think of the values, usually the top left hand corner over here is where you have 0, 0. Sometimes some renderers might flip it, but usually you will have something like 0, 0, where it's 0 for S, 0 for T. Then over here you'll have a value of 0 and 1. So 0 for S, 1 for T, and then 1 and 0. So S here is 1 and T is 0, and then all the way over here 1 and 1. Why is this important? Because when you're doing procedural pattern generation, these values here that range between 0 and 1 is usually what's going to give you the pattern, is going to give you the coordinates where you can draw your pattern. So it's very important that we understand how this is laid out. So just to give a quick example, I have over here a shader that I've been working on. Let me go ahead and close this. And what I did right now is all I'm doing is I'm giving the value of S on the red channel of a color. And if I go over here and do a make, you'll see the render. It's going to go from 0 all the way to 1 going across, right? So that's why it's going to red. If I go over here and I tell it, you know what, for this I want to use also T, and I'm gonna go ahead and make this. So now we have a couple of gradients, and I don't know if this display allows me to see. That's the red channel and that's the green channel. So red is going from 0 to 1 left to right, and green is going from 0 to 1 top to bottom. Let's see. So this is very important because, like I said, when you're doing procedural pattern generation, you're going to use these things a lot. And right now you've seen me do this, like invoke make. And basically I have, if I quit of this, under this location, which is where I'm working out of, I have these files right here, and I have a make file which at the moment handles all the compiling of all the shaders, and then at the end it tries to do a render if the shaders succeeded. So you can get these files at our GitHub account, and it's found under this location right here that I'm displaying on screen. So you can go ahead, download that, drop it into some directory, and start working and following along. So let's go back to our notebook, and let's cover what would pretty much be the basic, one of the most basic functions for creating procedural patterns. So this function is called smoothstep, and usually it has the following signature. So it's going to be called smoothstep. Don't be amazed by my amazing penmanship. Actually, there's an H in there. And then here you'll have value from, to, and then like the value or the domain over which this smooth step takes place. So to graph this a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and draw a graph here. So let's pretend that we're gonna try to apply this smooth step on the S. So I'm gonna go ahead and pretend that this down here is S, and it's going in this direction from 0 to 1. Right? So this is the domain over which we're texturing, and this over here on this side is going to be the returning value, and it's also going to be between 0 and 1 because that's what smoothstep does. So for example, if you give smoothstep a value of let's say 0.4 and 2 you give it a value of 0.6 and here an S, something like that, basically what you're gonna get is let me change this really quick. You're gonna get a line that goes like this, and then pretty much around 0.4 is gonna start curving up, and then all the way up to 0.6 is gonna ramp up, and then at 0.6 is gonna level out again, right? So what this means is pretty much that anything before 0.4, or in this area over here, let me change colors a little bit again. If we draw a quick line right here, let me draw another one over here. So this here is 0.4, and this here is 0.6. So anything before 0.4, this right over here, is going to return a value of 0. And everything over 0.6 over here is going to return a value of 1. This part over here. And this part in the middle, this little transition zone, is going to be a blend between the two colors. So this function smoothstep returns a float value which you can use inside of a mix operation. So let's go ahead and see how we would code this. If I go here and I do vim source stripes, and this is the name of the shader that I'm working on, I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to start a couple of functions. Oh, here we go. I guess I undid what I had before. So basically here I have a layer color which I've given a value of red, a surface color which I've given a value of green, and then here I'm creating a smooth step. And let me input the same values that we're using before, 0.4 and 0.6. So this is layer opacity, that's why it's called LO. And then down here what I'm doing is I'm doing the output of CI is going to be a mix. Mix is a random function that allows you to mix between different components based on a last one. So here we're going to mix between surface color, layer color, using layer opacity. And you see this mix node all over. 3D Studio Max has it, Maya has it, they all have it. They usually just have a user interface for it. Here's where you plug in the bottom layer, the top layer, and the mixing value. So with that being done, I can go ahead and make this. And there you have it. This pretty much matches the graph that I showed you guys before. So this is the surface color where it's 0. And then here around 0.4 is where the transition zone starts. And it starts transitioning and changing. And then eventually we reach the point where it's 1. And then it stays solid red. So if I bring this over, you're probably going to be able to see what I'm talking about here. Let me go ahead and, I guess that took it away. Let me escape this and make this a little bit smaller. So, as I said, this is the surface color, and here it was all green. Then you have the transition zone right here, and then on the end you have the value of 1, which returned as red. So just so that you guys start thinking a little bit more of how you can start doing controls, this area right here, this transition zone, is usually something that you want to control. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the parameter that will allow us to control that transition zone. So that's something that I would usually do, something like, we would do something like a float, and let's call it fuzz or fuzzy. And let's give it a value of 0.1, right? So then what you would do is you would tell it that smooth step over here is going to belong in 0.5, so it's right smack in the middle, minus fuzzy. Minus fuzzy. And then this over here is going to be 0.5 plus fuzzy. Right? So basically what we have done is we have told the renderer that this smooth step is pretty much always going to be placed on 0.5. So let me switch this really quick. It's pretty much always going to be here on 0.5, right there. But with, can I make this bigger? I guess I can't. It's 0.5, and then from this we're going to reduce fuzz and we're going to increase fuzz, and that's what's going to give us the transition period. One thing that I did do wrong is basically I am putting the full value as fuzzy on both sides, and usually what you want is only half of it, because basically fuzzy will represent the whole fuzzy area that you're working on. So usually what I'm going to do here is do fuzzy times 0.5, which makes it half of that. And then this is plus fuzzy 0.5. Now, if you guys spotted this, basically I'm running a couple of the same calculation twice. So usually it's better to do something like float and do something like half fuzz. And here we're going to do fuzzy times 0.5. And then we can replace this for half fuzz. Just a little bit cleaner. There's no need to compute things twice. I'm pretty much against that most of the times. Half fuzz. Right, so we have that set up. So now I can go ahead and run a make. So that rendered, and now we have a fuzzy area that's a little bit smaller. And as I modify my my rib file, which is right here, I can tell it on the surface stripe, I can go all the way here to the right and do float fuzzy and give it a value of 0.05. So now this should be a lot smaller. You can see the transitions getting tighter. And once again, if you make this even smaller, you will start getting what pretty much looks like a sharp line. So we have just added a little bit of proceduralism to this one simple function that allows you to build transitions. Now, one of the cool things about this is that you're dealing with 0 to 1 domain. So let's bring up the notepad over here again, and let's go ahead and make this full screen again. So over here we had this one over. So let's grab a couple of a new function. Let's go ahead and draw this long line over here. I'm going to try to make it a little bit bigger. Once again, we have s going from 0 to 1, and the return value going from 0 to 1 in this direction. So if we do two smooth steps, one of them going from 0.4 to 0.45 on S, and we have another one that goes from 0.6 to 0.65 on S, pretty much what we're going to do, what we're going to have is a couple. This one over here is going to be the burgundy one. Here, let's say here's 0.5. So we're going to have this one that gets to around 0.4, and then it ramps up, and then it levels out. And then we're going to have the second one, which we're going to make in orange, this one right here. And this one's going to go all the way over here, go past, get around to 0.6, and then it's going to do the ramp. Right? So you have two of this, but remember, this value here is 0, and this value here is 1. So if you take this and you subtract this value over here, this other curve over here, let's call this B, and let's switch this one over here to A. So if you do A minus B, what you're going to end up is with a curve that goes like this. It gets all the way up to 1, right? And then it's going to continue going. And then as soon as it hits 0.6, it's going to do minus whatever the value of this was. So the value of 0.6 was 0, so it's not going to do much. But then I said it continues and it hits 0.65. The value of 0.65 was 1, so it's going to do 1 minus 1 to return 0. So basically, A minus B is going to give us a new curve that is going to look, it's going to be C, and basically is going to look like this. And I'm going to draw a little bit over. I'm not too good at drawing with the pen here on the computer, but once you get up here, it's going to keep going, and then it's going to get to 0.6, and it's going to say, okay, 1 minus 0, 0, and then it's going to start transitioning because eventually it's going to get to 1 minus 1, and it's going to return down. So when you think about it, of how we did things here before, I'm going to color a little bit of our zone. So we had our layer color, which was green, and basically wherever it's 0 is green. So this part right here is going to be green, right? And this part right here is going to be green over here. Man, that's a lot of paint. And then over here in the middle, that's where we would have our red on this part right here. So basically what you end up with is going to be a texture that is going to look green, red as a stripe, and green in the bottom. So let's go ahead and try to replicate this inside our shader. Let's open that file. So we're still going to have our fuzz, and we're going to do this. LO is going to be a smooth step, and instead of starting it on 0.5, let's start on 0.4. And then we're going to do minus, and we're going to copy this over here. Okay, so minus, and then we're going to do this one at 0.6, which is pretty much the same numbers we were using with our fuzz. And if we go ahead and make this, voila, we have our stripe. So this, even though my drawing was a lot more crude, pretty much explains the same. Your first curve started at 0.4, and it didn't really go to 0.5 because we used our fuzz command, but it started somewhere around 0.4, and it started ramping up, and then it kept going, and then around 0.6, that's where the transition starts, and it did a subtraction of that. So it subtracted this curve minus this curve to give you pretty much what looks like a step function. It went up and went down. So right there, we just created a simple stripe. Pretty straightforward with a simple command, and we still have control over the fuzz. So if I go over here and I go back to my rip file and I change the fuzz value, let's give it a value of 1, and we go ahead and we make, this might look a little bit weird, but there we go. Now we have a fuzzy line. So this is a very simple introduction. I'm going to do probably about 3 or 4 more of these videos until we are able to build a pattern that's that makes a little more sense or is a little bit more exciting. But you just saw right now how with the smooth steps call, which is documented in the RenderMan interface, and you can find the RenderMan interface usually if you go to Google Chrome and you do new. You can type RenderMan RI spec, and there's usually going to be links, to this RI spec PDF, which is over here, and I believe you can do a search. This is not displaying properly. Let me see if I can do a find and do smooth step. Okay, so here we have the documentation of smooth step. Well, I moved a little too fast. So smoothstep, as I said, it takes a minimum, a maximum, and the value over which you're going to be working. And this just becomes very useful because you can do it in smoothstep. You know, you can use it to create steps or transition zones, and you'll see smoothsteps used a lot when we're developing shaders. As one final example of what we could do here, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the shader, and you see how LO had this value? We can go ahead and do this. We can do LO. We can do LO plus equal, and then we can do a couple of smooth steps. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. Get rid of this. Get rid of the type and do plus equal of this, or actually more than the plus equal, we're gonna do this. LO equals max of LO and this new value that we're going to compute over here. So basically, I'm going to change this to T. So basically what we're doing here is layer opacity already has this stripe over here with the fuzzy controls and everything. This part right here is basically going to create another stripe that goes around the T direction, which is going up and down. So basically this part right here is going to give us a stripe that's going you know, on this direction instead of vertical. Is going to be a horizontal stripe. And then what we're doing here is you're telling LO to give you the maximum value of these two that are combined. And actually right now I don't think that this is probably the right thing to do. Probably now that I think about it, let's gonna go ahead and do a clamp between and let's look what the documentation for clamp is. Clamp. I guess this location is showing up on a couple of... Okay, so clamp, we're going to give it the value here and then minimum and maximum. So if we go over here, we're going to say that we're going to clamp layer opacity plus this new stripe that we created, and we're going to clamp that between 0 and 1. You know what, this might seem a little confusing, so let me go ahead and do this a little bit easier. We're gonna take this out of here and do a float LOH for horizontal and paste that there. So now we have another stripe that is going on horizontal, up and down. So we're gonna do LO plus LOH, and I hope this makes it a little bit easier to do. And then we're going to clamp the value between 0 and 1 because we really don't want it to go any further than that. If we go ahead and make this again, we start getting a cross. And the cross has this kind of beveled areas over here because of our smooth step. As we start taking our transition down, that is going to start going away. So I'm going to go ahead and take the fuzzy and give it a value of 0.01, and make again. So there you have it. With a couple of very simple calls and a very simple shader, we're able to create this little cross. In the next couple of videos, I'm going to show you guys how to do more with smooth steps, and we're going to get more into the tiling and rotating, and we had another video where we covered that, but right now we're going to go really go in depth into this area. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Go ahead, download the files from our GitHub account and start playing with some of these values and see what else you can come up with. Thank you very much, and talk to you guys later.